Good morning. All right. That's all right. You're working or?
No, we got, we're going up. Hopefully we're branch off number one. So
You go up or down and.
once we bring it through, I gotta get that done before we start that and go up. How about that?
That's all a good thing.
What's the name? Old,
Is that right? We have the vote every May.
well, it's usually graduation or something.
Yeah.
Anyway.
Good news is you have a life.
If I can just get the, we got everything done. Stand on.
Oh, geez. And where is it? I'm sorry? I have a, you want to print them for, yeah, I guess, good idea.
I think it's.
Is that right? Oh, I thought you'd been there too.
I had not been. We went through courses. They have nothing good to say about Croatia.
I've heard nothing but great things about it. I had that on my checklist for life. Actually, I had a baby in from Croatia.
Okay.
And he'd go back every summer for 2 months.
Yeah.
And he said, hey, this place is good.
Yeah.
Water, coastline, he said.
I mean, I took pictures around or through it.
I'm not that opposed to it.
He really liked, which is other end from the rock, it's the run of the boat, like split or two from. So,
That all sounds good. It makes you hear about it.
So yours is. So I was thinking yours is no, this one's not. I saw, I showed them this was. Okay.
Hey, Chris, how you we're sitting over there. Coming up. I think there's one chair for each of you over there. Oh. Is that yeah.
See what's going on. Your dog looks great. Thank you. It's great. Presentations under there or?
No, I mean, I didn't have anything formal.
Okay.
I was just gonna
Planning to be out
reference.
there at the.
Right.
I just didn't know if you like what you had there. If you went, and I probably have everything.
Yeah,
Once you send me that.
yeah. I just will probably reference what was included in the with the memo. It's just stuff more or less for me. I need to.
What happened to the audio?
Hold on, I'll let them in. Are they gonna keep going around here? Hey guys, oh. They're already coming. Good, right?
Pick up screen.
Doctors, people more board meetings.
This is what I have as a memo.
Other access.
Interlocking. Filter. Diesel fuel tank.
Good luck, Alan.
Mr. Mayor, delighted you're here. Good to see you.
Glad I'm here too.
It seemed like a good idea when we scheduled this, but the rain didn't
This
go
one's
out.
okay.
Thanks for coming.
No.
Mayor.
How are you?
Nice.
I feel like I'm still shaking. Just let Fabio like 10 minutes ago.
Wow. Oh, man, it's a good workout to get.
He's,
your
yeah,
blood flowing and-
just, yeah, awesome.
Are we ready?
I think we're ready whenever you are.
Why don't I call the meeting to order? My name is Alan Briggs. Welcome to everyone. I'm the president of the All Head Association this year. We are delighted to have you. We have before us today an issue with regard to an application by the village of Bald Head Island for a new beach access and improvements of the lot adjacent to it owned by the village. As part of that process, they have to, it's a long process to get through the BHA. One, you got to get approved by the ARC, Architectural Review Committee. They have done that. That has been approved, took a number of months, but that's been approved by them. Now it comes to us, and that is the board of directors. And we have an obligation to then make a review and make a judgment as to whether we approve it for the issues that arise under the covenants with regard to the beach access and other issues. So we will be making a decision. As part of our decision, we seek input from the most affected public, and here we sort of included pretty much everybody on the island. So we give everyone notice and have the opportunity to hear and provide input to us, so we'll have all the facts before us when we consider this. If it is approved by us, it will then go to the next step. And that is the members themselves will vote, and that will be a vote on the 7th of June. There will be a meeting date that day of the members, if it's approved by us. And then and they will vote. That's a vote on lifting the single family restriction on this particular lot. As you are all probably aware, the single family restriction was lifted 2 years ago on this particular lot, but it's a smaller project. And when the village decided to increase the scope of the project, Mayor Quinn quickly concluded, as did we, that it would be appropriate to sort of go through the procedure again to be sure everyone was familiar with the increased size and the beach access, so you'd all be able to provide your input. So that's a little long explanation, but that's why we're here. We had checked 12 different weather reports before we scheduled this date. It was perfect, but unfortunately it didn't work out that way. So I think you have the agenda. The first thing we will do is call on the village to present what it is they are seeking to do and why. And the village has been kind enough to have Mayor Quinn come and Chris McCall, our village manager, and I'm not sure who's going first or whether you're going together or what your plan is, but we're delighted to have both of you.
Yeah, I think Chris is going to speak first and outline exactly, just bring everybody up to date as to what was presented before, and so people are aware. And then,
Okay, thank you, Mayor.
And if I may, and pardon me for interrupting after I turn over to you, but nonetheless, Chris is our village manager, and I'd just like to go a little bit over his background. And he's sufficiently shy, he couldn't tell us what it is himself because it's so significant. And so I'd just like to ask a few questions to kind of get it out as to what this background is. Chris, if you'd be so kind.
Sure.
Tell me when you graduated from undergraduate school, college.
2000, December of 2000 from ECU with a.
Keep your voice up if you would, please.
Yes, graduated from East Carolina in December of 2000 with a degree in urban and regional planning.
Generally, what's the degree in urban and regional planning? What does that mean?
So just working, well, in the public sector with developers on proposed developments. My first job was in Brunswick County as the county land planner. So I worked with a number of developers from 2001 till I came here in 2004. Primary responsibility again was just working on new developments, existing developments throughout Brunswick County, getting those approved by the county.
All right, and that's 2004. You came to Bald Head Island.
Yes.
Have you been here ever since?
Yes.
And describe for us, if you would, what job assignments you have had since you came here. What did you start as? Take us through the progress.
So coming here, what piqued my interest in the position here was it was assistant village manager / planning director at the time. So the planning director was sort of a step up in my professional career. And that's what sort of drew my attention to the position, which I ended up getting. And I'll say coming to Bald Head Island, however, there wasn't a lot of the traditional planning and zoning type related duties but it did encompass a variety of other project management job responsibilities. So that, from 2004, I'd say till 2010, it was in 2010 that I think the village council at the time identified that the erosion on South Beach was its biggest issue and its number one priority, to the extent that they created this shoreline protection manager position and put those job duties under my care.
Were you the appointed the shoreline protection manager?
Yes. Yes. So
Tell us what that means. What did you do?
This shoreline protection manager job was really the second of its kind in the state of North Carolina. The first one was modeled after Rudy Rudolph of Carteret County, the Atlantic Beach area. So mine was sort of the second one in the state. The primary focus is just all things related to, in the simplest terms, keeping sand on the beach. Working various projects, working with the Corps on the channel maintenance dredging projects, our private beach nourishment projects. Again, going back to 2010 with the focus on trying to figure out a long-term sustainable effort to maintain the point, the shoreline there, the convergence of the west-facing shoreline with South Beach, adjacent to the shipping channel, vis-a-vis the terminal growing project. And that effort took 3-4 years of working with the state to create coastal management policy and a subsequent bill that was passed by the General Assembly that initially allowed for 4 pilot projects for a terminal growing structure. 3 of those were public, and the 4th one was private. Private being Figure 8 Island is basically a homeowners association. A lot of folks don't realize it's not an actual town. But the other 3 were Bald Head Island, the Village, Holden Beach, and Oak Island Beach, of which Bald Head, as of just most recently with the completion of the Ocean Isle Terminal Growing Project, was the only one to actually go through construction from start to finish in 2015 through 2016.
What, if any, responsibility have you had, Chris, in connection with beach accesses, the dunes, and kind of what we're concerned with here today?
It's going back over the last 15 years, again, just managing the shoreline with various projects to promote the growth of the primary frontal dune system and figuring ways to maintain the shoreline, holding that sand on the beach through the various sand placement projects, followed up with planting projects as an example, where we would go in and plant rows of sea oats and bitter panicum. Depending on the timing of the year, during the winter time, we might plant American beach grass just to sort of hold the dune in place until we could get into the spring and summer planting season for those other types of beach plantings. But
have you had any particular education relating to this area?
Yes, I've had education. So I got my master's degree in public administration from UNC Wilmington. I started in 2008 through 2012 with a focus in coastal management. But all along the way, I'd say sort of on the job training, being afforded the opportunity to work with great coastal engineers like Eric Olson and his staff, who've been working as the island's coastal engineers dating back to 1989-ish. So a lot of just being here and seeing it and working it day to day has been a big part of my growth.
Do you have any certifications at all from the Division of Coastal Management?
Yes. So the village, we partner with the State Division of Coastal Management, which is responsible for the oversight of development along the oceanfront shoreline, as well as the estuarine shoreline of the creeks that we have. I've been what they call a local permit officer going back to when I started here in 2004. So soon to come up on 19 some years of working with the Division of Coastal Management and their field representatives.
Chris, thank you for your good work for us. Would you kind of then just kind of go on now and explain?
Alan, could I ask a couple of questions to Chris before we start?
Sure.
Chris, how many ADA ramps have you built, beach access ramps have you built during your career?
So we've basically had one access that was identified as the ADA beach access going back to my time here since '04. And that would be the one that's there at Access 15 along South Beach.
So you were involved in the building of that one? You didn't end up building any on mainland when you worked for Brunswick County?
Right, no, the county doesn't have anything really to do with what we do out here as the village. But that
Would you say that you're familiar with the issues associated with the ramp that are emanating out of the American Disability Act?
somewhat, yes.
And for a 25-car parking lot, what's the minimum number of ADA parking lots that need to go associated with a parking lot of that size?
I would have to check with our building inspector to see exactly what code requires in that regard.
Okay, so you're not, the answer to that question happens to be one. Just wanted to let you know it's one slot. Thank you. I have no further questions.
All right, Chris, with that, why don't you go ahead and explain this particular application and what it is the village is seeking?
Sure. So as I included in the memo that I sent to the association on March 24th and all the various supplemental documents, perhaps Carol, if you wanted to start with the site plan. Yeah. I think it's up towards the top. Yeah, that might be it. So basically what this is showing is the village's proposal to build this beach access for additional beach access to include parking area. And the village applied for a grant through the Division of Coastal Management, which it did receive. And a big component of the DCM grant was a focus on ADA accessibility. We felt after having gone through the process of applying for grants in the past that we felt sometimes we got overlooked. Some may question the grant receiving or how the grants are awarded, as some of it's based on sort of a socioeconomic status or tier. But with this one, we did focus a big priority of it with ADA accessibility. So this happens to be the third or fourth iteration of the proposed site plan. The initial site plan, in terms of the scope and magnitude, I would say the parking lot itself actually was double the size and covered a good majority of the lot. In addition, the access ramps, there was much more to it. And I think one of the initial meetings with the ARC was to go back and try to refine that and to reduce the overall scope or magnitude of the project. What this plan affords is, again, additional parking for the general public's use of the beach. It affords a number of spaces for handicap accessibility by way of just the closer proximity of the parking spaces to the ramp, more direct, shorter distance from point A to point B for someone of ADA needs to get onto the beach, to the water. the ramp or the design of the ADA beach access is designed in such a way that the slope of the ramps going up and down are of a rise that doesn't make it difficult for folks to be able to access up and over. Let's see here. There, in terms of the impacts to the dune, going back to Division of Coastal Management, they have certain design requirements that promote the access to the beach while minimizing the negative effects to the dune. An example of that, if folks have been out on beach accesses that may fall short of the oceanward side of the dune, you can see where the footpaths over time have sort of created these little valleys, if you will. And beach accesses and their installation is really a state coastal management policy and program that tries to minimize that. Because as we know, the frontal dune system along the oceanfront shoreline is the importance of it, or is critical to protection of everything behind the dune system in terms of potential flooding from storm surge or wave run up from tropical storms or hurricane systems. And so these access ways are built to continue to allow those dunes to grow in width and height, which is important. There are some of these that you'll see, the dune keeps growing. And in some instances, it's a continuous program of trying to maintain those beach accesses over time. So the village is looking to build this, to install it again, to add additional parking and to provide AD access. What else? I think I touched on the big picture of what we're looking to do. Mayor, did you?
Yeah. So there's a couple of things. I want to hit some issues that obviously come up in social media, et cetera. So one of the issues, and Robert brought it up, is like, how many parking spaces do you really need? Okay, so yeah, we have quite a few handicap parking spots here, and the question might be better answered as well. Is there some compromise that we can make, and do you put in 2 parking spots today, but leave the space for additional parking spots as our population grows, or as the increased need is identified. The number of parking spots in general, I don't think is out of whack when you look at the overall growth of the use of the beach and not having parking spots in this area. Right now, people are parking on the street, in the right of way, backing up into traffic. When they leave the beach, you have children getting in and out of golf carts right on the street when they've gone to the beach in this area. And so the idea of having a parking lot off the street is both for safety and for disguising it, being able to plant it around a surface parking lot. I think it's in the village's interest. Another question that has come up over and over again is like, oh, how am I going to get, it's so hard. I'm going to be pushing a wheelchair up this ramp, and the ramp is huge. The ramp is actually set at a 1 in 12 pitch, which is, recognized by ADAs. That's, the appropriate pitch for a ramp. And so we're not doing anything that's any steeper than anywhere else in the country. This is not an end-all situation. There's being an architect, I look at this, it's like, oh my gosh, look at all the things they're building. And in this case, this is when you're looking at these switchbacks. And the original plan that was presented to everybody had a tight switchback. We were going to build one ramp right next to the other, and it's all in one piece. This actually allows us to landscape between the switchbacks, incorporate them into the dune much better. And so the impact, visual impact, in spite of the fact that it looks like there's a lot going on, should be less than doing a more direct route. This actually blends in better. There's some things on this plan that probably most anybody who's been following this wouldn't have seen. Since the initial presentation, we've hired a landscape architect who's come back and made recommendations for plantings in and around this so that the impact is, again, visually is a lot lower. And there's been conversations about these major parking structures. There's a surface parking lot. It's not any different than any other parking lot anywhere else on this island. And one of the big differences is that we're actually planning to landscape around it. So its impact is less. There's also been discussion about where it should be and whether, couldn't we put a handicap access, ADA access ramp somewhere and just have, just some parking for handicapped people to use it. The whole intention of the ADA policy is one of inclusion. And so the idea of building a ramp just for this handicap, a handicapped person. And so it's almost like they're going to their entrance, we'll use our entrance over here. The idea of this ramp, the amount of parking, is that you're introducing access for everybody and everybody's using the same access. I think that's critical when we're looking at different sites. There's a question that hasn't Kristen attacked, but I think it's one that's good. When we were looking at different sites, a quick solution that the board has brought up and we've looked at over and over again is like, we do have some sites on this island where the grade going up to the beach is less than here. Not a great deal less, but it is less. And so the logic was, let's go there. It's easier and we have less impact. In studying those, there was other complications that we, in the study, decided this wasn't the best location. One of them was the remoteness of parking. You could have the parking as I described it, one handicap parking and other parking somewhere else, but that kind of defeats our purpose. The other one is in looking at the dunes and how mature they are. This is actually a healthy dune right now. And some of the other locations that were flatter are not at this point yet. And if anything, the hope is that those dunes will grow to be like this one. And so the notion of attacking or approaching one of those sites might be a situation that we'd be shooting ourselves in the foot. And that, to be looking at sites that are more mature, more established, is more responsible approach. Did I trigger anything in you?
Yeah, Carol, if you want to slide down just a tad bit, I want to touch upon sort of that elevation from the side profile.
Yeah, this is a little more subtle than, I wish we could have it be less subtle. But when you're looking at our access points to the beach right now, typically the approach is stairs up, build a bridge. And, just miss the dune completely. This one with the ramps, with the stairs, so there is some slope in the bridge itself. And the ramp and the bridge are, for most of the area, are within 18 inches of the ground. So it's not as though we're building this thing up. We're actually trying to follow the contours of the dune in the proposal.
Chris, did you have more?
No, I think we've hit the highlights. I mean, I know there's been a lot of questions that have been asked from folks And I've tried to respond to those. Some of them are the same questions that have been asked, and but I'm here today to continue to answer them the best I can, and we try to move forward with this project.
Thank you both very much. I appreciate it. Let me go to the next phase. The next phase of this is the directors get to ask questions. Thank you very much, John. But that is, the directors will ask questions, and then once the directors are done asking questions, members of the public can ask questions. And then we'll proceed on.
I have one answer for you, Alan. I graduated from college when I think Chris might have been 4. So
How long have you been on the island, Mayor?
a while now. Yeah,
You've been an architect here for how many years?
25.
How many homes have you built on this island?
Yeah. We shouldn't go down this path, but it's probably close to 100 maybe, and some with renovations, probably around 160 that I've touched.
Do the two of you recommend this access that you are proposing for our village now?
Yes.
Yes. And and one thing that, a caveat when you say, yes, I recommend this. We'll all look at this thing after it's built and look at it out there. But when it's going to stand out, it's new, and it's in a location that it's going to stand out. One of the things that in looking at it, I'm used to looking at the island this way, that I'm looking at it built, at like 80% every day. And the rest of us are used to looking at this island the way it is right now, and I hope it doesn't change. We're only 50%. So in the long run, this is not a monstrous element that's going to be in our landscape forever. It's an element that's going to be blended into other construction that happens.
Thank you. John?
So, thank you, Alan. Couple of questions. Chris, do you know what the elevation difference is between the level of the parking lot and the top of the dune?
So the grade elevation there is roughly 9 feet or so.
That's not the net. That's the net change in the course of the ramp. We go from 9 to 14. So you're looking at a grade that's changing from there to here. It's not as though that was part of the discussions that we had in the beginning, that, oh my gosh, you're going to put this ramp and it's going to go over 14. No, it's not a 14-foot high ramp. It's essentially a 5-foot. And we're doing that roughly. And so
it's about a 5-foot rise. There's more, but anyway.
Yeah, I think the peak of on the topo is about 14 feet.
Right. Yeah, I agree with that. I just didn't realize the parking lot level was so high. So, I mean, the reason for the question is, with regard to the incline of the ramp, it's a 12-and-1, which is what's required by ADA. But because it's a 5-foot rise, it's basically the minimum that it's got to run would be 60 feet, 5 times 12.
right.
To get to the peak, and then you've got a flat area, then it'll have to come down equal out. So the minimum, you're going to have 120 feet of incline.
We get up and
down.
Yeah.
Okay. And with regard to the parking, has there been consideration given, rather than having a large lot like this, similar to Access 42, to having distributed parking at the various beach accesses, say, 5 or 6 spots at this one, 5 or 6 at this one, rather than 25 in one spot?
I'll do that one if you want.
I mean, over the years, we have at times done some expansions of existing beach access areas and identifying which of those are sort of the heavily more often used. One is right on South Ballhead Line as an example, where we extended it. We did one on Silver Sides, I think it was. We expanded there. So, So,
Yeah, so I've been had conversations with people about that. And there's, I have mixed feelings about it. There's a fair amount of parking here, and, I don't know whether, when you're going down South Bald Headwind during the summer, it's not as though there's parking spots left. The parking spots that are there are full. And so as an alternative to parking on the street, I strongly suspect that this will be full too. It's just given the opportunity to park there, they will. In the long run, maybe I'm being foolish. I can't imagine that we don't have 3 of these parking lots going down South Beach.
I mean, my point is more, if, rather than having 25 spots in one spot, if you pick 4 accesses and had 6 spots in each. And BHA owns land and the village owns some land that could be used for those kind of parking spots, so.
Yeah, the question really comes down to efficiency in construction. So I think that, if we looked at the goal of getting parking off the street and say, well, I'm gonna get into the dunes everywhere, 5 spots here, 5 spots, go around and then come back, well, let's add 5 more, all those, as opposed to let's do this one. And the plan, has nothing to do with what we're presenting here, but the plan is that this summer to do a study of all of our parking spots and identify areas that need to be targeted.
yeah, there was too some prior discussion with the Bald Head Island Club that they wanted to try to offer some more access to South Beach and the area across from the club. But as many of you may know, the sandbag revetment underneath that is so huge. We didn't want to compromise that in any way. And so this location just further down, sort of in an area of South Bald Head, that there's sort of a gap, if you will, of distance between existing homes, that was seen as a suited area to do this.
And then the last thing is, the other area that's been proposed by a couple of people is down at 24B. And that is an area where the village owns over an acre that is on the beach. And I mean, I hear the argument about, well, the dune's gonna grow, but I mean, if the dune's gonna grow there, it'll grow here too. I mean, I understand that, but that seems as though, I mean, an acre is a lot of land that is already owned by the village. And it would in fact be in fact, it's almost flat to the top of the dune ridge there, and then there's a slope down. So is there a particular reason that was not considered?
Well, I think it was considered. I mean, I've walked it a couple of times, and Chris and I have walked it together and discussed it. You do have some undulations in the dune, so it's not as though you can do what we're doing on this one, where you can go up gradually with the dune and come back down. You're going to come up, go across the undulations, and come back down. Am I right on that?
Yes.
And the other thing is that there is all that land that the village owns, but if you look at how it's landlocked, we'd be building in your backyard. It's not parking that's on the street. Do we have a slide of that?
Yeah.
I guess I would say, no matter what we do, you're gonna be building in somebody's backyard.
Yeah, you're right. This one though, why don't you just, you got a pointer, anybody have a pointer that could point out the area that? There we go. I'll try not to break it, all right? Yeah, okay. So the area that we're really talking about is here, and introducing parking closer to the beach and on this area. The problem that, we identified is like, okay, so that means that all these houses that are already established around here, we're sneaking between them to get to a lot that's internal to the beach. And while that's physically possible and everything, it's not, I think it's a lot harder to sell, for one thing, but it's also, I'd hate to see us repeating that over and over again, like down over here. So, the having the carts directly associated with the street, from a planning point of view, just appeals to us. One of the drawbacks, so an alternate to that was there is parking over here. But in looking at studying the site and saying, okay, well, let's put the parking over there. If there's a flatter side, we'll get all the way to the beach.
Too far for ADA.
It's just a big distance, and so you're, by the time you get to here with your walkway, that's where comparable where the parking would be at the other location. So it's quite a hike.
Yeah, just to add to, with the parking, I always say folks are gonna park the closest from point A to point B to get on the beach. Because we know, I mean, that's a nice parking area, and a lot of times it doesn't really get used because it is such a long walk. And then the other point is, if you notice, a lot of our beach accesses that have any length to them quite often are basically a footpath on the sand, on grade. It's not until you get closer to the frontal dune system where we put the boardwalk with the stairs to traverse over the peak of the dune. And so a number of reasons for that, just the cost and the repair and maintenance of keeping those boardwalks in good shape. And so that goes to, if we talked about putting some parking here, how would they get from the paved road to the parking lot here and then with the boardwalk up and over the dune? So we'd have to, provide some sort of elevated cart path, because otherwise they would just have to push them on that sandy footpath.
Yeah, you would obviously have to have some kind of pavers or something.
So, but in answer to your question, yeah, we did consider it.
Thanks.
I have a couple questions. So a couple of years ago, the village submitted plans for a ADA ramp at a different location. What happened to that?
So if we go back to when the initial vote was held to lift the single family restriction, there were two properties that were in the village's minds, potentials for a new access. One was lot 1313, and then the other one was lot 1319. The lot 1313 was the longstanding handicap access that exists today. And in the CAMA grant application, we put in there both sites. The lot 1313 was going to be done sort of as an improvement to the existing. And then, but subsequently, the lot 1319 came into the picture. There was a property owner that had reached out to a former council member and indicated that they were looking to settle their estate, and if the village was interested in acquiring that property, at which point the village did appraisals on both, and ended up purchasing the lot 1319. So I guess going back to your question, during the timing of all that transpiring, and not that it was intended to, not that anybody was trying to pull wool over eyes, but the language that was included in that initial membership vote was the language for lot 1313 to lift that single family utilization. All the meanwhile, the village had moved forward and purchased lot 1319 to do the access. And that was December around 2019, the end of 2019. Then we got into COVID in 2020. We did get the CAMA permit to do the beach access, but with everything they were dealing with COVID, if things like this one, this got put on the back burner. Issues with transportation and just trying to get things built greatly reduced because of COVID. So that's,
So was that the original location not an option? Why did it become not an option anymore?
because the village council, they agreed to purchase lot 1319 for a variety of reasons.
Right, and my next question is with regard to the grant, is there a time component that you are required to build this ADA ramp or you risk losing money?
Well, the CAMA grant, I just recently got it extended a second time till the end of this year, because we did get that grant in 2018. And so there is a time on that, but that's the only thing in terms of the potential to lose funds if we don't do it.
I don't have any questions. Robert, do you have any questions?
No further questions. Thank you.
One last statement then, is that the whole board? Yeah, so both the association and the village recognize this as a need that we have, or a responsibility that we have to provide this. And so that isn't in question at all. So when people are voting, and I don't know how you'd even do this, Alan, usually I'd like to negotiate things, until we get it. This is something that should happen. It ought to happen. And I'd hate to see it get thrown out because we want 3 fewer parking spots, so we're not going to approve it. Or some reason like that. I'd rather have it be, this is the association's remarks, and a contingency is like, it's approved if bing, bing, so that we can keep this process going as opposed to killing it.
At ARC, when you presented it to ARC originally, it would be accurate for me to say that you had like 43 proposed parking spaces?
Yes.
It would be accurate to also say that ARC requested that you reduce those parking spaces?
Did it about a week, turned it around.
Accurate to say you significantly reduced it from that 40-some down to 25 in response to ARC's request?
That's right.
Thereafter, would it be accurate to say that ARC approved the request? I don't have any further questions. Does anyone else on the board have further questions? Does any member of the public here or members here have questions? I see a hand in the back. Yes.
So I'm Rachel Nelson, and I live right now, and I'm handicapped myself. So I am very happy to be your guinea pig. And
Alan, could you ask the people speaking to speak in the microphone? We can't hear them on Zoom.
The speaker's handicapped, though she'll do the best she can, Robert. Just do the best you can. Don't worry about it. I'm not sure of a mic work.
The closest one's gonna be right there next to Alan.
Okay.
Just hold the chair.
okay, no, I can stand up. Thank you. So I'm handicapped and I tested out several entries. Needless to say, it's impossible for me to reach the beach anymore. The easiest is 24B because of the incline, but it is a long walk. 42 is also a long walk and the dunes are higher. This one I have no clue and no experience. My concern is these zigzag ramps. Who is going to maintain them? Because if you have dunes around, the sand will blow constantly on them. And I can see us slipping, wheelchair not being able to go up. Second, we could have rails once you build this thing. And by the way, I want to say up front, I'm super grateful that you have approve essentially this project, wherever it will go, it's needed. So the other small comment I would make is for people like me, unless you have someone pushing you in a wheelchair, I can still, with some difficulty, walk. But once you get to the beach, there is no place to sit. So would there be a possibility to consider a cement, not a wood, because it would be destroyed, but some sort of cement seat for people like me that want to just be in close proximity to the beach, but cannot carry a chair and cannot sit on the sand? We need some support. So those are little comments. I'm not particularly favorable of one side of the other or the other, because I don't know what this is. But I just want to bring up this.
Thank you very much. I
Thank you.
appreciate your comments. Do you, gentlemen, have any response to these?
So I'd say on the repair and maintenance of the boardwalk, that the village would continue to maintain that. When these boardwalks are initially constructed, they are already elevated at a minimum of 18 inches and a maximum of 24 inches, 2 feet, to follow the contour of the dune. So that height above the dune does give it some time for the dune to grow. And so that's not to say that at some point in the future that there might be some sand on the boardwalk that we'd have to come in and sweep and maintain. Typically what towns do is they re-elevate the boardwalk portion of it. When we've done that with some of our older accesses. And then, I think you mentioned about the difficulty of pushing that, the slope of the boardwalk is sort of akin to having one going up to one's home to get in the front door. That
It's like the one you have.
Right here.
yeah,
That's basically it.
right.
I don't know what that slope is, but I doubt it can't be much more than, it's probably less than 1 in 12, but it's pretty close to the same.
And if anybody's ever at other beach towns like Wrightsville Beach or Carolina Beach, if you happen to be, there's a number of ADA beach accesses. Ocean Isle Beach, I was just there. They have a really nice one there, so that folks can sort of get a vision of what one looks like in place to see firsthand.
Yeah, your other question, I think is very worthwhile. It is in this proposal, a landing at the end, so that, you get to the beach, what good did that do me? I gotta turn around and go back,
Yes.
Yeah, we'll look at that. Go ahead.
Well, we do have Moby mats, and these are mats that as you come off the boardwalk, you roll them out and they lay flat. They're like rubber, and they lay flat on grade of the beach once you come down off that boardwalk on the ocean front side. And we've got 2 of them we purchased for the specific intent of adding these during the summer, during the season, to the end of these boardwalks. As far as a concrete fixed seating area, unfortunately, unless
May be gone tomorrow.
but the State Division of Coastal Management, they have pretty set standards that don't necessarily permit things like that on the beach
They
itself.
couldn't put like a wooden bench like we have on the streets.
No, we couldn't, not on the beach side. But there is a landing at the top of the boardwalk for seating. Also, again, the village has, anytime folks need or would like to get out there, we have these wheelchairs that have the big balloon tires on them. They're much easier to push out on the sand. So,
But I understand there is a deposit of $1,000 every time you use one.
if they take a deposit, I'd have to check. I'm not 100% sure.
That's not a check.
Huh.
But
Why? It seems sort of out, yeah, that seems sort of a lot. I'll check on that.
Thank you so much.
Thanks so
very
much.
much. Yes. Come up wherever you want. You have a seat there or stand or whatever you like.
Alan, there's also a microphone right up there on the podium. She's got papers.
Take your choice. You got 3 shots there. I'm not a fan.
My name is Carrie Landfried and I live at 325 South Ballhead Wine. My husband and I bought one of the original houses on the island that were on generator. And we've enjoyed this over 25 years being here. In fact, our daughter decided to get married on the island about 5 years ago. We have a good friend who is quadriplegic, and we had other friends that were handicapped that would have liked to come to the wedding. And everybody agrees with Ms. Kelso that we do need more attention to that. But the one thing, there's several things I want to point out to you. Are these people going to stay overnight? Because if they don't live on the island, there's very few homes here with elevators and places that they can stay. And they're all in the marina or on West Beach. And you're going to make the handicap ramp on South Beach. So that's one of the questions I have. Another thing is the ability for an ambulance or fire truck or whatever to get to the person that's handicapped. I've been sitting by our friend Ricky, that's a quadriplegic, when the fire alarm went off or there's an emergency. How's this ambulance going to get to this person on South Beach? Are they going to pull in the golf cart parking lot? Are they going to get on in the street? Or can they actually go to the beach and pick up the person? And I didn't get to look at all the other places that they suggested they're used right now as alternatives. And I'm sure, there are some good ones, but I guess so my points are the emergency thing's a big one. And is there a place to?
Repeat that. I didn't hear what you just said.
The emergency piece is a big one. Are we going to be able to get to that person? And then are you going to be able to add to this? Could they have a bathroom or a bench where you're proposing this, a handicap? There's other things I think we need to think about this a little longer. The stores, shops, restaurants, some of them are not handicapped accessible, but it seems the marina and West Beach have the most accessibility right now. Okay, and then the money that we're spending too. I go to the beach a lot, and I've gone in the cart, and I've never had to find a place to park over there. The only time I've seen lines of carts is when there's a turtle hatch. And then you see the people line up. There has been a decrease in the number of spots at 15. You used to be able to park like 6 at 17 and then down at 15. Now you can't park this many. The vegetation's all built up there. There's hardly any sand. I think 2 carts fit there comfortably now. But if that's land that we own, I think that we can certainly increase that. Okay, those are my points.
Very helpful. Thank you. Village, either Mr. Mayor or Chris, either of you have, please stay up for,
Yeah, I can do that.
and see if they have a response there. So you can hear that.
So on the ambulance, being able to access the beach, we do it all the time. We have vehicles that are four-wheel drive that we can get out there on the beach. We actually have 3 emergency 911 beach access locations along South Beach, one at Sandpiper Trail, which is the very west end of South Beach. And then we have the one at Peppervine, which is centrally located. And then we have one at the far east end of the island at Access 35. So depending on where the call comes in, at any one of those 3 points, our public safety and the QRVs, the quick reaction vehicles, can access the beach to get to the person should they need help on the island. And just by way too of all things relative to a 3.5 square mile island, that response times on Bald Head Island compared to any other beach town that you might be on the beach at and needing help is probably 15, 18 minutes tops for them to get there. So
They can't fit in an ATV. They need a van.
well,
or an
basically what
ambulance
we
with a
do.
stretcher.
Yeah, basically what we do with the QRV, it has a stretcher on it. And once they get them, once they get the patient where they can move them, they put them on the QRV or on the UTV. We also have the UTV, I forgot to mention, but and we've probably in the last 2 or 3 years, I can say we've had to go out there and have had some positive life-saving events of getting some folks off the beach into light flight and flown out to up to Wilmington, up to New Hanover. So we have ways to do it.
It's not like at number 11, I looked at that one, you don't even have a ramp now. You just walk out onto the sand, and it's a very wide area where it seems like you could say emergency vehicles only, and they can come right off of West Beach and right onto the beach very quickly. The beach is very close. And also you have more room there to build some bathrooms that are handicap accessible.
Access 11 is front of the villas. And there is a lot of Dune.
Maybe I'm using the wrong number. I'm talking
13, I'm sorry, 13, maybe.
the one that's on West Beach is across from
Well, you're on
Horseman Trail.
Okay.
Well, across from Horseman Trail.
West Beach, gotcha.
Yeah.
Okay.
That's anything else?
That's the ambulance. You want to handle the other?
Well, the question of, you know, handicapped accessible accommodations. You know, we don't have control of that. You know, I hate to say, you know, it's like, I'd love to say, yeah, you know, we have to be able to do that. I'm finding the trend lately anyway, is to at least be putting in shafts for elevators in most homes that we're designing right now. I don't, you know, to, you know, force people to do that. It's not in our
Remember the
capacity.
place you were talking about across from Horseman Trail that we just discussed? There's a home there that has an elevator that goes to all 3 floors. It wasn't rentable at the time for our daughter's wedding, but it is now. And the beach would be right there. I mean, that person could sit on the beach, on the porch on the beach, and watch the whole family. And that's not going to be possible with the other one. So yes, we need more things, but are we doing the best that we can do?
Thank you very much. Yes.
So I'm Dr. Matthew Lanfried, orthopedic surgeon, just retired. We've had the house since '96 here, but we just moved here permanently in July. So we're down here all the time now. And as you might suspect, you're building this almost right in front of our house, okay? Actually, it's down the road a lot. But first of all, thinking of the spot where this is at, there's a 4-lot dune. And let me back up, because if you were involved in building up South Beach, you did a fantastic job, because it was almost gone. That dune wasn't there, and now it's there. So the question to follow that is, why ruin that? Did all that work to make it nice, why ruin it? Okay. There's not a lot of places where there's extended dune without a house on it. That's one of the few places. The other's in front of the club, but the dune's so close to the road, I guess you can't do that. So why are, you know, if our mission on the islands to maintain as much natural look as we can, why are we taking one of those few places and putting a parking lot on it? Okay, I mean, that's my first question. And then my wife alluded to, why aren't we developing some current accesses instead of making something new? And then going back to the board member on, well, let me say one other thing. I'm not organized, because this is first we're hearing it. Thank you, Pat. All right. And in that same 4-lot space, there's 2 beach access. Well, there's a house and then a beach access right on the other side of it. But you got 2 beach accesses within 500 yards of each other. Are we going to put a 3rd beach access in between them? That doesn't make a lot of sense. And now we got 3 beach accesses all within 500 yards, you know. So that's a point I wanted to make. You know, why couldn't we take one of those 2 accesses we have and utilize those? Or like he said, you know, we got 5 or 6 parking lots at beach access 15. At 17, you don't have any parking. You got 2 spaces. Why can't we put 3, you know, 3, 4, 5? It doesn't take much to make a parking space. You know, you the width of the golf carts and, you know, a few 4x4s, and you create a parking space. So if we need to increase parking all along South Beach, there's multiple accesses, and adding a few parking spaces would help. Like I said, we've been here since '96. You go out on the South Beach and there's not a lot of, that portion of South Beach, in spite of the multiple accesses, is not utilized very much. So, it makes me question. A lot of people go to where it's closest to them. And, granted, that's in the middle of the island, but people are still gonna go across from their house or down the road or whatever. So being an orthopedic surgeon, I understand why we need a ramp, why we need access. I think that's absolutely necessary, absolutely wonderful. I'm questioning the place we've chosen to put it. How many complaints have we had over a few years about not having access to the beach?
I know we've received phone calls, but
Yeah, but
can't quantify it to a specific number,
But I mean, we do need to make that access to places, but let's see, mention the two accesses. The mayor mentioned that, we're building a parking lot, and it's the same as any other parking lot. I kind of disagree with that. You have parking lots with the stores, you have the one parking lot on East Beach. I haven't seen anywhere along the dunes where there's a parking lot right up against the dune. So number one, I disagree. It's just like any other parking lot. Number two, a cement parking lot in the middle of that beautiful dune is not natural. It's not going to appear natural, no matter how many bushes you put around it. And then the last thing, that I'll say, and I may have some more questions after we hear some more things, but I was going to address it maybe, but our understanding is that any structure or anything being built has to be 90 feet from the vegetation on the dune. I can't see how in that little lot, how you're going to make a parking lot and stay 90 feet back and make this process. And I also question that it's a 5 feet rise. Are you going to raise the parking lot? Because that dune's much higher than five feet from the ground. So if that parking lot's going to be on the ground, you're going to go up that 9 feet or 10 feet and have to go up that in a big hurry. So I guess I'd like an explanation how that equates to 5 feet versus the height of that dune. That's a lot of stuff. But
I'll answer the last
this is the
one
first
first.
we've seen the
Yeah,
presentation.
So based on the survey information we have, the grade at the parking lot is at 9 mean sea level, and the grade at the top of the dune is at 14. So this is the information we have.
Every day. That's
I'm just telling you, and that's the physical condition right now. It might be perceived as being different, but that's the data.
Maybe the back of that lot as it slopes up,
Right.
but not from the road to the.
Well, no, not at the road.
So
No, at the road. So
elevator.
you're going up. By the time you get to the handicap parking spots, you're a lot higher than the road. So you're right. When you're looking at it, when you're standing at the road, that dune it's just a different perspective, point of view. It's higher. You're growing up to the base of the dune, and then the dune happening.
the road may be around 6 feet. The road elevation may be around 6 feet above mean sea level. Then you traverse up. And just so folks, when we do beach fill projects, when you're standing on the beach, that grade is at an 8 foot grade elevation above mean sea level. So that gives you a little bit of.
How deep is this lot?
The lot is 120 feet, I want to say.
So how would you get to be 90 feet away from the vegetation?
So to address that, I think your reference of the 90 feet from the vegetation is related to the required CAMA setback to build, say, a single family home. You have to meet a certain setback from the first line of vegetation landward. With beach accesses, obviously, they're going to be within that setback. So the State Division of Coastal Management allows certain things to be built within the oceanfront setback, such as beach accesses. Otherwise, there wouldn't be any way to build those if you absolutely had to meet that setback. But I think that 90 feet is for.
Where would we find that information?
The CAMA, Division of Coastal Management, has all the CAMA regulations on their website. But again, I'm the CAMA local permit officer, so I could certainly go back to my office and look at it in more detail and find the regulations to show you. Because the other point I wanted to make is that, you know, the village also had to apply for a CAMA permit to build this. And we did get the CAMA permit. We had to submit the site plans and the drawings, and we did that back in 2021. So the state knows of the project and permitted it. So
the issue of it's a parking lot like any other parking lot. Probably shouldn't have said it that way, but I was responding to things I had seen on social media, and there was a big complaint about the monstrous parking structure that was going to be built. And when I say it's like any other parking lot, we're not building a parking structure, and that's what I was responding to.
Or we're building, that's gonna be a cement parking lot,
No,
or asphalt or something.
no, it's not asphalt or concrete.
It's just marl,
It's marl.
What?
Marl.
which is it's compacted gravel.
Compacted.
Then there's a portion that is going to be wood for the handicap accessibility. And so what I was reacting to is more of, it's not an elevated parking structure of some kind. It's on the at grade landscape around it.
And then my last point I wanted to make, if you look at those same 4 lots again, 3 of them have been donated to the land trust. So myself being one of them, several people have put a significant investment in trying to keep that dune nice, and that just gets all undone in one fell swoop. So just wanted to make that comment. So thanks for your time.
Thanks.
Doctor, thank you very much for coming.
One quick question for you guys.
Yes, sir.
If the members all voted for lot 1313, does that apply to 1319?
The members didn't vote on 1313.
No, I thought he said they did.
No, they voted on lot 1319, but at the time, the description of that was what was going to be proposed to rehab the access at lot 1313. That makes sense.
So the issue is that the wording that was put on the proxy for the members was not reflective of what the village is actually proposing now. And for that reason, BHA has decided we must go back to the members for another vote.
All right.
So the other vote is effectively void because it's changed enough that it doesn't apply.
Thank you.
Again, thank you, Doctor. Appreciate all your good comments. Yes, we have a young lady here who has some comments.
Not going to get anybody. I am going here to tell you, Chris McCall, I have nothing but thank you for you. My husband has worked with you, loved working with you. I have appreciated everything you have. I don't know anything that I've disagreed with you about except this. So yay, for all of our years of being together, this is pretty good. And also, Peter, thank you for what you do and the investment. You have created such beauty on this island that you are talked about royally. So we thank you for what you do. My comments would be, as I've looked at documents, it says our goal on Paul Head Island is preservations for generations to come. We've also got a statement that says we want to continue the unique quality of life and preserve the ageless appeal of Paul Head Island. Yay. That is wonderful. I wish all of you could see this picture. I'm sure y'all have seen it.
Yeah.
That is the area that we are looking at. To my knowledge, that is the only preserved dune ridge left on Bald Head Island. Now, you can answer that. I've done checking around, but I can't find where there's another view like that, where the people coming to this island for hopefully years and years and years, and for my grandchildren and great-grandchildren to come, that they will get to experience this. That is just paramount to me, with it being the only dune ridge. Also, the handicap ramp is desperately needed. Because I volunteer to help everybody, I get myself in major trouble. And not being I'm strong, but I'm not big. And all of you that remember Carol Souter, nobody would push her in the wheelchair but me, because nobody else much was brave enough. Well, gang, that ended when I dumped her out, going down an incline up at the marina. And so looking at the plan, if someone my size, or like my mother that has a walker and stuff like that, to go that ramp and then to go that trajectory and then back that trajectory, and with a big wheelchair, if you want to pay $1,000 to rent it. As strong as I am, I don't think I can do that. I think that it's not what I think. We should consider the easiest access for our friends and for our family and for our visitors. I walk that dune area almost every day of my life. There are three, as you, Doctor, you pointed out, there are three accesses already there. And to put this in the middle of this one beautiful, come back up, you beautiful, dune area is, in my opinion, destroying one of the most beautiful parts of our island. And also, as you addressed, I shared all my notes, so hopefully I wouldn't have to come up here. Given the history of that, I have been here, I live at 321, and I've been here since 1988. I've watched that whole area from the club down be overwashed completely with sand. Chris and the group, they did a marvelous job of restoring that dune. But then several years ago, there was a breach in that dune and the water just flooded in. Now, I'm not a person that can quote the height of everything like that, but when I go, that ramp at 17 was just rebuilt. And the trajectory to get over that dune is much more difficult than the one that was straight. It's beautiful, and I like it. Thank you. I like it a whole lot better. But when I stand at the bottom of that dune, now I'm 5 feet something tall, you cannot even see over it. So it does not logically, number-wise, make sense to me, 5th grade or 6th grade or whatever. It is a high dune. And to have you go up and do switchbacks on one of the most pristine parts of our beach, that you're going to have that structure. It doesn't like it either. So, I would ask you to consider that. Also, on the map that was given out, I do have some information that I had from one of my other neighbors. I'm supposed to be representing about 5 or 6 of my neighbors that gave me permission to represent them. This was the map that was sent out. You can't see it. This was the lot. These roads are not even here today. I have watched all of those houses that have been right in front of here. They've all moved back toward other parts of the island. To me, we have stabilized this part of the island. We have made it beautiful. And to go in and destroy, I also believe, is there not a pump station right in here somewhere? There's the pump station where where we used to thank the good Lord. I used to walk in my foyer to water up to here before we got the pump station in. And I believe the pump station is right on that lot or right in front of it. I don't know if that is still usable or what, but to have a handicap ramp, a pump station, 3 other ramps in that one area. Can I use the word? It's almost like raping, the prettiest part of that. Let's find a place that'll work for all of us and be a win-win, because I want to be on y'all's team and I want you to be on my team. Tell me what to do.
Ma'am, why don't you stay up there while these young
They
men
don't have any
respond?
questions.
So just to recognize that there is our ocean emergency outfall pipes there in that general vicinity. These are the second set of emergency ocean outfall pipes that that are not connected to the lagoon at Muscadine, or excuse me, Steve Bonnet. Flooding that you likely saw at the time was possibly backflow, or because we did open that box up to draw down flood water during Florence to get it out. So there wasn't really a dune, it wasn't a dune breach. It was because that dune is so high and tall and wide. So that's probably what you saw at one point with the water back behind there.
But I have lived through from the 90s, and there wasn't even much of a dune there.
You're right.
And it has built up thanks to your hard work beautifully.
Yeah, because the homes that are there on the south side on the ocean side of South Bald Head, all those homes had at one time or another gotten a permit from the state to put sandbags around the base of them to protect them from erosion. Going back, to 2000, 2001. And so, another point, thank you, by the way, for those comments. And
Well, I love working with you guys. Love
I
working
vividly
with you
remember,
guys.
well, working with Ken many years ago. Just one point, and Doctor, you mentioned it. I say this with a certain level of humility in that I built those dunes. I built them. Now, I didn't do it by myself. It took all of us, but the day-to-day of getting that done, and with your all's help with, obviously the financial backing to do it. So I say that if there's anybody in this room that would want to do anything detrimental to that dune system, it wouldn't be me. It would not be me. I punched holes through it after Florence at the very east end of South Beach to get millions of gallons of flood water that was dumped upon us, 42 inches of flood water. We punched through that dune. I hated to do it, but it was the right thing. We got that flood water off this island and we plugged those holes and we pushed the sand back and we planted it and revegetated it. And today, I don't think you can even tell that we did that. So the dunes are highly dynamic and that thing grows. And so that was just the point I wanted to make with that. So thank you.
And I want you to do one more thing, visual. I'm a visual. Just look at that. And you see that one and that one. And if you had that with a big switchback going there, what a sadness. Thank you, thank you, thank you.
You're welcome.
Planned well, can't imagine a lot of beach access. As far as harm to the dunes, it's the visual loss and that movie that she talks about all the time. It's much worried about the dunes. It's the visual loss of maybe the army was on. That's sad.
Well, Pat, thank you very much. I really appreciate your fine comments. We'll next hear from Justin Ramp. He is online, and before he speaks, I want to just say a couple of words about him. we're all here and in part to thank Justin and his wife. They are the ones, they live closest to this particular access. And they are the ones that really brought this matter to the board of directors' attention in December. I'd like to say we take all credit for that. We don't. The fact is, Justin Gravitt brought it to our attention in a very, very detailed letter that was laid out as thoroughly as any PhD thesis you would ever see. He gone through every document the village presented, every document the board had presented, all the minutes, every issue. He had all of the arguments, all of the issues there presented to say that we need to have a redo with regard to the permission that was granted 2 years ago for 1319. And if it's presented, the public should have a chance to hear it. He told us all that. And he was absolutely right. When I met with Mayor Quinn said the same thing, and that is we need to redo it. That's why we are all here. But this young man that we are about to hear from is the man who brought us here, Justin Gravitt.
Well, thank you for that introduction. And I don't know if that puts a target on my back now, but it was a very kind introduction and appreciate that. This is a big deal. What we're proposing is to lift covenants on a residential lot and change the character of a very treasured portion of the island here. And we've talked a lot about the merits of the project, but what we are here for is to discuss the merits of lifting residential covenants of this lot and changing the profile of this character of this section of the island. Given it's such a big deal, I put together a presentation of my own that I feel like I would want to see if this were a decision that were being put in front of me. And I'm going to try and share my screen here. And I think I was given permission to do this. So can folks see that?
Yes.
Okay. Great. So I think there were some pictures that were handed around that show this area and what a beautiful area it is. For full disclosure, this is from the porch of my house, which is at 332 South Bald Head. And this is access 17 right before it was redone here this past winter. And this is what we're talking about. We're talking about building a project. And let me see if here. And just I want to give visual representation because I'm a visual person, and I think some other folks in the audience here are as well. And I'm going to try and so the proposal that we have here, we've talked a lot about what the proposal is, and it seems like we've got a little bit of a mixed message on what we're actually doing. Is this a ADA access improvement? Is this a parking project? What are we actually building here? And it seems that the initial scope of this project was for ADA ramp access and ramp improvement. And what has happened is that this project has morphed into a large public works project. And I would echo all the things that the previous speakers have said, that Mr. Quinn and Mr. McCall have come with very good reputations, and I don't know them personally, but everything that I've heard from and interacted with them is very, very positive. And I fundamentally don't follow the logic with pursuing this location. And so this is my thoughts, and I'd like to hear the explanation on why this location is the best location if we are to, if ADA access is the primary objective of the project, which I think is the primary objective. And what we're proposing to do here is now creating a high volume access to mirror access 42. And that's what I think has been echoed by Mr. Quinn and Mr. McCall. And what it seems to be taking a turn towards a parking project. And we have also a boardwalk with a large observation deck and permanent seating. And this is, as we've talked about, this is a steep grade with 14-foot dunes, 4 ramps and 2 switchbacks. And per village comments in 2021, the intent is to raise a platform a maximum of 24 inches above grade. So that's going to put it at 16 feet in elevation, which is nearly 2 stories high. So imagine the folks that are, at the street or at the houses that are looking out at a platform that is 16 feet in elevation. It's visually very obstructive, and that was before the landscape addition with the plantings. It's going to create a further wall. And as we've talked about, this is over pristine dunes, requires vegetation clearing and things that have already been covered. And I think we know where the location is. The top image here is the location on the island. The bottom image is the exact parcel. And you can see the stretch of the dunes there, which have been put into conservation use, are adjacent to this proposed access. And here is the project overlaid to the proper proportions to give a scale of what we're talking about, to give people a visual interpretation of the project. This is what I would want to see if this were being put in front of me, and if I were being asked to change covenants on this lot and change the character of this lot, this is what I would want to see. Now, some of the discussions regarding the need for this, or that we need additional beach access. Well, here we are 200 feet from access 17 and 500 feet from access 15. I think we've heard from some of the speakers that this is logically, I mean, do we really need another access sandwiched between 2 existing accesses? If we need another access, I wouldn't think this is the spot where we would need it. So why do we need a new access at this location? I mean, I think the intent of the project is clear that we've moved beyond just ADA access. We're looking for a high visibility observation platform and tourist attraction that's going to pull people off of South Bald Head as they're coming from the marina. It's going to create a high volume parking lot, and this is going to be an attraction that people are going to come and visit. And it doesn't feel that this is primarily an ADA access anymore. This is clearly not the best location, given that we're at 14-foot dunes at this location. This is just would not be the ideal choice if that were the primary objective of the project. And just to give folks perspective of what would be required to be pushed up these 2 switchbacks and 4 ramps is what we're talking about there. And so I would echo the difficulty of pushing up a beach wheelchair. And so there's been some discussion about what happened with the original project and how it changed, how it moved over to this current project. And there's, part of why we're here is because the project has changed from, what was originally proposed to what is proposed today. And it's not quite consistent how we started to where we are today. And access 15, according to the village website, is no longer handicap access because the dunes had naturally grown over it. But the intent is now to, rather than build the ramp over that using the existing infrastructure, is to move down a few lots and build an entirely new ramp access over even steeper dunes. And noting that the original project was supposed to be $13,000, which was the improvement of access 15. Now, as of September, we were looking at a project of $132,000, and that was prior to any of the recent inflation, and that was a low quote. I think the next nearest one was $300,000 and didn't include planting material. I think as of now, I don't think there's a current bid, but based on work that I've had done with ramps and driveways, this is a several $100,000 project. There's just no way around the cost of this. And looking to move the location to a more level area where you'd be removing switchbacks and ramps. You could guarantee you that each of those switchbacks is a $20,000 switchback. So you could earn back the grant. If you change location, you lost the grant. You could earn that back by removing a switchback, and you could earn back the cost of the $16,000 lot if you remove the other switchback. So I think there's other locations that are better. These are all the homes that are going to be visually impacted. There's 11 homes that are going to be highly impacted. I think everybody's seeing, recognizes what a beautiful section this is, but these are homes that are impacted, and the BHA board, their objective is to, among other things, is to maintain property value and ensure the properties of the current members. And looking out at a 16-foot in elevation, nearly 2-story high observation deck with plantings that are going to grow up is going to create a wall for these homes. We've talked about the visual impact here and the rise. I think you've heard a couple differing factors about the visual impact and the rise here. If you look down at the person standing there, we've talked about that this is starts at 9 feet in elevation and goes up to 14 feet. That's a 5-foot rise, but that's not counting the 2 feet in elevation above the dunes that the village is asking to do, which creates a total of 7 feet. And so then if you do the 7 times 12, that's 84 feet in length of ramp. Add that together, that's 168 feet. So we're talking about 7 feet in rise, not 5. And this visual impact here, unless a person is 7 feet tall, is not an accurate representation of what we're looking to build. Nor are there ramps in this picture. And it's just a minimized visual impact diagram here, which if we are doing something as important as lifting covenants on a lot, there should be appropriate visual impacts, which this is clearly not showing. We've talked about some of the environmental impacts. This is talked a lot about the dune breaches. This is an image from 2019, shortly after probably what Hurricane Florence was in 2018, and not sure if the floodwaters came from the inward side or the oceanward side, but you can see that there was significant impact to the dunes there, which were replanted thanks to the work of the village, and has recovered and grown very nicely. If we were to look and see where this project is going to be built, this is an accurately overlaid circle of where the ramp will be built, right over those planted sea oats and right over the most impacted area of the dune. And further, if there were any storm surge coming over, it would accelerate over the impervious surface of the lot and hit the homes that are right behind. And while we can use best efforts to construct the access ways to all the standards that have been presented, the fact of the matter is that people walking off the boardwalks fan out and impact the growth of the dunes. This is access 21 and 23 right up the beach. This is a recent picture from September, and you can see that I think these were also recently rehabilitated access points that are still showing where the dune impact is, dune growth is impacted. And so, do we really need new access points, or do we need new parking? It seems like we have a lot of differing factors in what we're trying to achieve here. Further, the size of the lot here, if you look at where the village lot is, it only encompasses the parking lot. The bulk of the ramp and the observation decks will be built on BHA common area, which is circled in red there. And so this is, while the village project will be taking place on the lot, it's primarily parking that's going to be built on the village-owned lot. The ramps and the observation decks are going to be built on BHA common area. I just think that's very important to recognize that by the BHA board pushing this forward, and the members that would be voting on this will be voting to build this on common area. And to highlight the aspects that the BHA board is obligated to uphold, these are the design guidelines. We talked about the ARC approval, and the ARC is really not designed to approve commercial projects. There's not a template for approving public beach accesses with pavilions and ramps. Specifically, the design elements are directly counter to the guidelines. Number one, you're discouraged from using building over steep dunes. Number two, permanent seating and platforms are specifically not allowable design elements. Number three, that any of the dunes anything that could diminish the dunes as a protective barrier is discouraged. And then another design element is to discourage building access points next to adjacent access points. And so, there's several key design elements of this project that are counter to the design guidelines that the board is entrusted to uphold. So I want to point that out, that while the ARC approved this project, there is not a template for approving these types of projects. And there's a lot of design elements that if me or any other third party were to come and do this, you would not be allowed to do this. And so fundamentally, this is a residential lot. It's not zoned for commercial activity. The covenants were placed with intention, and changing the covenants would negatively change the character of this stretch of residential area. There's other aspects of this project that would detract from the residential aspect of the project. The high-speed traffic along the straightaway is going to this is going to be the first spot that day trippers and tourists come and see. That's just the practical reality. They're going to come in not familiar with driving golf carts. They're going to be entering and exiting this lot, probably 100 times a day with a number of spots. And that high-speed section is going to create collisions. This is a residential lot. It's not designed for 100 golf carts to enter and exit every day. The extent of ramps, people are going to ride skateboards and scooters and be a deterrent, as we've heard, for people with special needs. The observation decks, an attractive nuisance. I think we know that Access 42 has has in the past been a spot where people loiter and has become a strain on public safety. And just the general noise and the high volume aspect of this lot is not conducive to the residential character of the neighborhood. And so by voting to lift these covenants, you're going to be changing the character of this neighborhood. And all the aspects of the project can be debated, pros and cons, but the fact of the nature is that the covenants were put in place for a reason, and this project will change the character of this neighborhood. So are there alternate options? Yes, there are alternate options. Everybody recognizes that this is an important need. ADA access is extremely important. It's just, does it need to be at this location? If the intent of the project is first and foremost ADA access, then there are other options. And if parking is a primary concern, that should be a separate discussion and a separate project. This shouldn't be commingled here for a topic as important as lifting covenants. And what I haven't seen is I've seen a lot of heard a lot of qualitative discussion about beach accesses and locations for this project, but the village does use metric-based approach to prioritizing locations and projects. And this is an example from 2020 with the rehabilitation of existing accesses where they were ranked and rated. And I've heard a lot of qualitative reasons why this is a good location, but I would expect for something as important as this, that there would be a very metric-based approach and something that would mirror what they did for much less expensive projects, such as rehabilitating existing access points. So what are some other options? Well, the first option would be the original option, which was improve access 15. There were stairs built there recently to cover up to access over the dunes that had grown over, but what would the cost be to build a ramp over those stairs, starting with existing infrastructure? It'd be a lot less than building an entirely new ramp 5 lots down. Additionally, you could add some parking. Folks have mentioned that this is a highly underutilized access point with only 2 parking spots. You could add parking within the existing easement and dedicate 2 spots to ADA. The impact to the homeowners nearby would probably be pretty minimal, given that this is an existing access and you'd be looking at 7 homes with existing views of access 15 that might be minimally modified. Another option which we saw was, do you add the parking lot, ADA parking lot, up close to on Peppervine and tie into an existing access 24A and allow just ADA parking there, and then build a ramp that goes over the low-rise dunes there, which would be, very similar in scope to what we're talking about, but my opinion would be a much better location and would require going over much less steep dunes. But if this is a parking project, it does not achieve the objective of creating high visibility parking lot where folks are going to be attracted. This is an ADA access prioritization project here. So there would be about 8 homes that would be impacted there. And then an alternate option to the same location would be a small parking lot off to the other side, building a new ramp. And this is identical to what's being proposed, which is a parking lot and a new ramp, but at a location that would be less impactful from a visual or dune standpoint, and probably less distance with 110 feet and without switchbacks, which based on the 7 feet in elevation would be 168 feet minimum from the beginning to the end, based on what I just calculated. And if we kept the parking lot to just ADA access, then this would be very minimally impacted from a visual standpoint and would serve the needs that everybody knows are a priority. And we'd have 7 homes that would be visually impacted there. So one of the other issues that was addressed in the memorandum was shared 911 access, and village not wanting to share 911 access. Well, basically all the accesses are currently shared with 911. This is access 42, which everybody's familiar with. And the same thing, the yellow narrow area is village owned property, and the same thing that we're proposing here is a parking lot with a driveway and then access to the beach. And it's shared here. In fact, it's shared at all the 911 accesses. You can see it, all the 911 accesses, 11, 24B, 35, and 42, all have public parking, all have trash receptacles, are all intended for folks to use. And there's no reason why it couldn't be utilized in this situation as well. And in fact, the village provides guidance on how to share 911 access. It says don't park in the entrances, make sure that emergency vehicles can be clear, and provides guidance on how not to block 911. So these are intended for general public, and no reason why they can't be used here. So in conclusion, this project is needed from an ADA standpoint, but I don't think the association should be required or feel the obligation to change covenants that were established purposefully and with intent that would negatively impact many property owners. There are other options, the couple that I presented, plus any other options that might be available if they were seriously considered. If this is a parking project, then that should be a separate project, and lifting covenants on a residential property in a project that's going to change the scope of the neighborhood in this section of the island, it is for a parking project is, I don't think a good use of the board's power to lift covenants. And there's other options that would serve the needs of this project. And with that, I will conclude. And again, thank everyone for their time. This is an important subject, and appreciate I'm sorry to raise this issue to begin with. And but I think it's important, and I think all the viewpoints need to be heard and seen. And these are the considerations that I would look for if it was an important topic that such as this, it's going to require the vote of the full BHA members. That all.
Justin, thank you very much for your fine presentation. One of the things I'd like to do before the village responds is several others I've inquired with regard to their academic background and qualification. As to you, your qualifications are sort of apparent by your presentation. By the same token, wouldn't it be accurate to say you are an engineer by your initial training?
I am. I'm an undergrad engineer from Virginia Tech.
And would it be accurate to say you then went on, got a master's in business?
I did. I received my master's in business from UNC Keenan Flagler.
And are you president of a business now in Raleigh, the chief executive officer?
I am. Yes, I'm a large scale solar developer. So we develop utility scale solar projects, and I'm very familiar with the development process. And I'm familiar with zoning processes, and I'm familiar with all the aspects that go into requesting zoning and feedback from the public, and what the public expects, and what is standard and customary when developers, which in this case I would consider the village a developer, should present when they come to ask for changes to residential property.
Thank you very much. And with that, let me turn it over to the village in the event they would like to respond to any or all of this now.
Just a few points to comment. We did do some side view profile visuals from existing accesses, distances of 100, 150, 300 yards to get a sense of. Now, I don't disagree with the aerial image that Ms. Miller had. When you look at it from an aerial perspective, you're absolutely right. It's right there in the wide open. But from on grade, standing on the road over time with the dune plantings and the growth of the dune, seeing it as blatantly as one might suggest some years down the road, I don't know that it's going to be that visible. Looking at what it would take to reconfigure existing accesses at 15 and 17, given the location of the entry points of the walkway, how that profile of the dune is right adjacent off of the road. I don't know that we would have the ability, unless we cut into the dune feature, to be able to site the ramps to give the ADA component to it. The question of it starting out as a ADA project and then turning into a parking lot project, I think, in my opinion, it's always been both. It's always been about both. The long-term need for, as we think about build out of the island, the need for additional access to the ocean, just like we think about additional access to the creeks for the public, for the island residents to use. The beaches are no different than that.
I don't know if folks can hear me, but I think the video is frozen for the Association Center.
Yeah, I would say the same thing. I don't hear anything. It's like, it is frozen.
Hold on, please.
Is the chat operating? Okay.
My apologies. Robert, can you hear me? This is Pam Henson.
Yeah, Pam, I can hear you, but apparently we're frozen
Yes,
totally out. Okay.
absolutely. So apologies. I'm texting Carol right now, so just stand by. I've refreshed my screen. It's showing me as host, so it could be an internet issue. So I'm texting her right now. So please just bear with us. Thank you.
Okay, okay. Oh. Is it raining down there?
Yes, it is raining. It looks like it's letting up, but so yeah. Okay, I'm still
Okay.
texting, so
All right.
bear with us.
All right, we're back up, Alan.
Back up.
Alan, we're back up and running. I don't think you heard me. Our apologies to those of you on internet.
Alan?
I'm never lost it again.
We have a seat, we're ready to keep going.
Hello, Alan?
Yes.
Alan, I would suggest keep going, but just be aware that seems to be coming in and out. So if we freeze again, we'll put something out on chat to let you know.
I apologize that. apologize for that, but we'll keep going, do the best we can here. But Chris had to leave. He has childcare duty tonight, and that takes precedence over us. I'm shocked about that too. Nonetheless, he had to leave, so Peter is here to carry on. Mayor.
Okay, Justin, first off, just thanks an awful lot. You've spent a lot of time on this, and the level of thought you put into it is admirable. And I don't agree with everything you said, but you shouldn't expect me to. I don't expect you to agree with everything we say either. So there's a couple of questions. One of the things that Chris was pointing out about the emergency access points. And when we started this project, that was something that I couldn't wrap my hands around at all, because we have these emergency access points. They're flat, they're kept that way. And my first reaction to what the previous council came up with, a handicap access, can we go to the emergency access points? And subsequently, I walked them, about 5 or 6 of them with Chris, trying to figure out, well, can't we just use these to develop a handicap access point? In each case, there is the need for the handicap access to actually build a boardwalk of some kind to allow people to get through. And the points that we were using as emergency access points do not have enough land to do both. And it's not can we use them both simultaneously? No, they'd be side by side, and there isn't the space to do that. It would have been nice if we did.
Just to clarify on that, so that there's shared access for the carts going into 42. So how is that different from how 42 is handled?
You're not using, the access is not simultaneous to, when you're having an emergency vehicle go through there, it would go through, and obviously people would get out of the way. If you're building a ramp or building even the boardwalk to go through, you wouldn't be able to build the boardwalk and still have enough room for that emergency vehicle. They'd have to be driving on the boardwalk, which means our lifespan of the boardwalk would be, it just wouldn't survive.
My understanding, Peter, and maybe you could put the chart up, that particular slide up, but the two locations that he looked at on his slide for the parking, the ADA only parking, neither of them had any overlap with the current ADA access. They were kind of parallel to it. So, but nobody's suggesting building a ramp or a parking lot on the current 24B 911 access. Is that slide available?
You're talking about like at access 42?
No, 24B. Justin, can you put up that slide that showed the two different?
Yeah. I think maybe his point is that you would have to share the carts would have to share the first half of the path, which.
Yeah, just the ADA carts only.
Yeah.
Right. But there's nobody's suggesting building a parking lot on the 911. Nobody's suggesting building a ramp on the 911. The only overlap is an ADA only targeted vehicle going up to park.
That's right. And what I'm saying, there's still a need for some built element, whether it's a boardwalk or something for the beach access wheelchair, and that there isn't space to do that and have space for the vehicle to get through.
Well, but look at what we're looking at on the slide here. How do you rationalize that when we look at that structure? That little brown gizmo there is completely detached from the pathway.
Yeah. Okay. Robert, I'm not addressing that particular one, and I get what you're saying there, and I recognize what you're saying. And if we did build a parking lot back there close to the dune, yes, it would not be. I agree with you. I'm not going to be able to go through each of Justin's statements and say, yes, I don't believe that, or yes or no. There's some things that stood out, and I think it's important one thing that is misleading to a lot of people when you're talking about a two-story structure to get over the dune, it's just not, that one is, I don't understand how you got that, but
It's
I think it's
16 feet in elevation. One story is about 10 feet high and 16 feet, building an observation deck 2 feet above the dunes.
I get the total
So that-
number, the
Yeah,
critical on all this is the net number. And if you're building you say, do we just lose?
I just unshared because I thought that we were past that point. But the visual impact is important for the folks on which visual impact should be in consideration for lifting covenants.
I
folks-
agree with you. I think the visual impact is critical.
And so a platform that's 16 feet high, which is between 1 story and 2 stories, is right in the middle of the view shed of those houses there. So that's why it's relevant that the rise is a separate point from 9 feet to 16 feet, which is 7 feet. That's the ramp elevation and the need to have switchbacks and 4 ramps. But the 1.5 story point is a visual impact point for the neighboring homes.
Another element that I'm jumping because I would like to have seen your notes beforehand. We'd have an intense conversation. When we're talking about visual impact and we're looking at aerial views of this thing, and it's important to note, even on the beach access points that exist now, when you're looking at them, the overall access in this case is not visible at the same time. You're talking about the switchbacks, and you're going to be seeing one set of switchbacks from the road. You'll be seeing the other set of switchbacks from the beach. It's not as though you're seeing the overall element simultaneously. I might be wrong with that, but if you're looking at something climbing over the dune and then going back down the other side, it's not that you're going to see the whole thing at once. We're going to have some.
In your experience, was that an appropriate? In your experience of having done architectural drawings and presenting to folks, is that a sufficient visual impact? Would you expect to see that yourself if you were on the receiving end?
Would I expect to see the drawings?
Would that be the level of quality that you would expect for a visual impact diagram if in your experience being an architect?
I think that the visual impact and if you're questioning how I look at drawings, something that gets missed a lot of times, and it's requirements for the ARC submittals, is that you actually even have a roof plan. So when I'm looking at anything, you're looking at it from everything from the elevations, that you're looking from different sides, and even the elevation, which is the roof. What I'm saying in this statement is that if I'm looking at, since we're talking about drawings, if I'm looking at the front of the house, I can't see the back of the house at the same time. I'm not saying that one is more important than the other. I'm just saying that you're only seeing what's visible to you. And yet when we're looking at some of the views that have been called into question, you're looking at it from above. And so you're projecting the overall scope of the project all at once, and yet the actual experience won't be that.
Right.
Peter,
I'd welcome the.
One thing to think about visual impact is not the ramp itself, but the parking. During the summer months on 1319, you're going to be, people's homes are going to be looking at 24 carts routinely parked in that space that you guys have designed. On 24B, you've got 3 or 4 ADA slots, which are not going to be used all the time. And most of the time, people who are, quote, visually impacted are just going to be looking at the ramp, not even the parking, because there's not going to be any cars there. I mean, how would you like to build your house in front of a parking lot? Think of it that way for those people who are, close to the 1319 site. I mean, I wouldn't be happy building my house when I looked out the front window. I'm looking at a parking lot, that's going to be probably heavily utilized during the peak summer months.
I think.
I guess I would welcome visual impacts from the neighbors where the view is impacted that accurately represent structure and the plantings. In my experience, having presented development plans, that's a very important component to having zoning procedure or covenants lifted, is to provide an accurate visual impact to the folks that are impacted. And I'm not seeing that here.
Peter, you have more comments?
Yeah, the only other comment that I have is, I recognize the concerns you have. I think that we have to be careful when we're looking at things like this, that they do have an impact, and you're going to be seeing them. It's going to impact some of the houses in and around them. It's hard to imagine these things in a 10-year framework, but I think we can't not do that at the same time. And so I think when you're talking about, Robert, you're talking about, oh, I'm going to see all this parking. I still have the argument with myself that it's like, yeah, I know we're going to have this parking, and we're going to have more parking on this island for beaches, and it's inevitable in the build out. And so to do it responsibly is what's critical right now, and that's what people should be questioning here. I recognize your questions, and I would, there's a number of them that, I'd have the same questions. And so I don't disagree.
You're dedicated. No, you're dedicated people, and Chris's, dedication to the dunes is evident in his unscripted comment. I mean, it's clear that he cares, and so I would think that, given I would think, given all things considered, there's better locations. That's, I think, is the.
I got that in your message, and I think the other message that's very clear in what you were saying is to not confuse what we're doing, not using ADA access to justify a mega parking structure. And I think that when I was speaking to Alan earlier, the village is interested in the same thing as everyone else in terms of providing this access point, whether it's at this exact location is the one that the village thinks is appropriate, but the scale, et cetera, is something that, I like this to keep on talking about.
I understand that. And I appreciate it. Thank you very much for your responses, Mayor. Is there anyone else on the board who has any questions of Justin?
Justin, I had one more thing that I wanted to talk about, and it's quick. So when we're looking at you were citing the different ARC guidelines, and they're associated with residential construction. And so you're right, based on those, there shouldn't be certain things going on. And yet at the same time, we had somebody in here who was talking about, I get up there and then I can't even use the beach, because even if I went over the ramps, what do I do then? And so one of the issues that has been called into question a couple of times is the viewing platform at the top. I think that has even shrunk since the initial submittal, but elements like that in this situation, I think, are critical, because we're providing a service, we're providing accessibility, and if we provide only the walkway that dumps you on the beach, we're not serving the purpose.
Yeah, I think that the point about the ARC was that there was a lot of discussion about ARC approval going prior to my presentation. I think my point is that this is really outside the scope of the ARC's responsibilities, given this is more of a commercial public discussion, and maybe their approval is shouldn't be taken as a validation of the project.
That's right. They clarified that in their meeting, that they were looking at the project, not the site. They were looking at the specifics of the construction. And I agree with you.
Okay, thank you, Mayor. And I no more questions from the board. Are there any members that have questions for Justin?
I just wanted to concur with Justin, the visual, you're talking about a visual on a plane from ground level, you're gonna see not all those ramps, but all those houses are 12 or 14 feet up on the first floor and then the second floor. So
They're gonna be looking down.
looking down on all those switchbacks and all that, you know. So it's a different, you know, there's a perspective that it is substantially disrupting, changing the landscape of the very
Thank you all. And we have now comments from John Fisher.
I've got a little presentation. I think she's going to bring that up for us.
There when I was playing with getting us reconnected. Otherwise.
It's okay. I just want to make sure I can see everything you have to say.
See what it's saying.
Hey, see what you have to say.
See what it's Okay, well, my name's John Fisher. I've been a resident on the island for 17 plus years. And this is certainly something that's near and dear to my heart. Number one, we absolutely have a need for ADA accessibility on this island. We absolutely, number two, have a need for additional parking on this island. Combining the two is honorable if it works. The title, if you'll go back to the title slide, please. I'm not ready for that. Considerations is where I'm going first of all. These are many considerations we've heard this morning already, or this afternoon, I should say, literally. And those considerations have a lot of merit each way and everywhere. There are things that we have to take into consideration that will weigh heavily. What is a proper decision? And I understand the struggle, but it's one that we have to do. Is it going to be an attractive nuisance, for lack of a better term, for visitors and people coming by? Anybody ever watch the sunset from South Beach? That platform will fill up. That platform will attract people. A parking lot like Access 42 attracts people constantly. So it will be a magnet for people to come in and stay and visualize and go through. And you're right, if you're in that golf cart riding around, a consideration for location. Who are we trying to serve? What's the real point here? It's going to be, hey, look at that. That's a viewing platform. Let's stop and go and view. So there's a lot of things to be talked about, a lot of things to be looked at, and they've come out today. And I said it would be brief. Mine's a little different twist. So we'll go to the next slide. The primary users of an ADA beach access ramp will not be in wheelchairs. When we think of access and ADA, all I hear about, I shouldn't say all, primarily I hear more and more about the wheelchairs, pushing people, getting up, getting them over. These are some examples. This gentleman, not uncommon to the involvement I've had with warriors. I've served on different boards, still do, Taylor for Freedom, things like that. Most of the people we deal with aren't in wheelchairs. Ivan Castro, he's been here numerous times. He wrote the book Fighting Blind. He prides himself on the fact that I'm not in a wheelchair. And he's totally blind. And he can get around, but he can sense everything and everybody. Amazing. He could come to my house. If my wife was standing there silent, he would feel her presence and say, "That's Beverly. I know she's right there." And she said, "Yes, I am." But they're instinctive and they're proud people. They want to know where they're going, what they're doing as independently as they can. Next slide, please. Just the facts. This is from USA Wheelchair User Statistics. You can Google it up. I don't make these things up. 20% of the women, 70% of the men with disabilities use wheelchairs. 11.6 million disabled are using canes, crutches, and walkers. 2 million additional people are added to wheelchairs on an annual basis. That's the statistics from the wheelchair people, and I'm sure they track it, where they're going, what they're doing. Okay, next slide, please. The village of Balded Island has hosted over 125 disabled veterans and their families. Many of you participated, if not all of them. Dana Bowe, double amputee. You won't get him near a wheelchair. He'll go to the beach. But he'll fuss and cuss beside me. Why can't you get something a little better for us to get out on this beach? So do we need access? Yes, we do. They're very proud. Proud veteran. Next slide. Many of those who welcome to our island are veterans who have served in years gone by. It's really sad, and you've probably heard this. Now, you guys just go ahead. It's just too difficult for me to get out there. It's just too hard. It's okay. I don't want to hold you up. That's a World War II veteran. There are a few of them left. Next slide. Friend of mine, Vietnam veteran. Went to visit him many times when he lost that leg. He said, man, I can't wait to get back to Bald Head so I can get out on that beach and go fishing. But how are you going to get me out there? Next slide. Our goal and objectives are for the less fortunate, regardless of their ages. My point in pointing out statistics, a little bit about that, is 11.6 million people that aren't in wheelchairs. It's little children. Sorry, I've seen too many of them. I haven't seen too many. I'd like to see fewer. But we got to think about those families. You want that kid to get to the beach? Do you want them to be independent? Do you want them to be on their own and getting it done? Of course you do. You want them on the beach? Who's pushing who? Is it the man pushing the woman? Is the woman pushing the man? What is their size and stature? I've seen these families we bring here struggle to get their spouses out. In wheelchairs, with canes and walkers, they struggle with that. We have a responsibility. Our council stepping up to that. It's a difficult decision. Is there a right place for this thing? Of course there is. But guess what? All the balls have to be balanced. We have to preserve the aesthetics of the island. We have to think about the integrity of what we're trying to do in the conservation preservation. We have to think about our core responsibilities to humanity as a whole and the sensitivity of these people. Have you ever felt defeated before you even tried or try based on the visual obstacle that you see before you? An ADA beach access cannot present itself as a physical barrier. I'm not suggesting one place or another, but I am empathizing with the fact that if I pull up to that proposed site most recently, and I start looking, if I'm a little kid, big kid, or an adult, that's kind of a Kilimanjaro for me to get up and through. I may feel a bit defeated as a child or an infant or as an adult or as an elderly person saying, it's too much. So we have to take that into consideration. And I put a quote in there. Placing one foot in front of the other testing my inner strength. There should be no obstacle too hard for this warrior to overcome. And that's a child or an adult or whomever you might picture it to be. I'm just an individual on a mission to prove my disability hasn't won. Don't let that disability win. We build that into these kids, these adults, these veterans. Next slide, please. It's not the disability. You've heard me say that, and I got a shirt, I wear it. It's the ability. Let's not forget the target audience and true purpose for making our beach ADA accessible. The constraints are real. The concerns are real. The council has a tough job to do. We as citizens, being good corporate, not good corporate, well, good corporate, but good individual citizens have a responsibility. Let's do the right thing. Understand cost. I remember a project not too in the past distant future that was expensive. It created a lot of concern, rightfully so. But it was the right thing to do. And it's a showplace that we want to attract people to. And we do. I'm not overly concerned about the cost for this because it's necessary. That's not my primary reason. My concern is listening to and preserving what we hold near and dear to us as a Bald Head Islander and for the future. Preserving the past, preserving the future. It's not an easy decision, but it's one that has to be made. So when I asked Alan, just let me kind of go at the end, because I knew we were going to hear these arguments for the sake of argument, the proper way. Debate. We're going to hear debate, and we have, and we should. And it's a lot to mull over and go through, and then still come up with a proper decision. But we have to make that. So my point to council, thank you for serving. I understand that role. To the board, I understand that role for serving, and to the constituents of the island. We've got a big decision. It's the right one to make. The location needs to be considered over and over and over and over. Keeping in mind, and again, my earlier point, 11.6 million Americans don't use wheelchairs, but they're handicapped. If you look at the dynamics of this island, the people that visit here, that live here, and that we bring them, we have an elderly population that we need to be thinking about. My father, until he absolutely couldn't walk, would go fishing every year with me on the beach up in the Outer Banks. That's near and dear to my heart. If he were still alive today at my house, let's see, go on ahead, I'll be there in a few minutes. I'll be there. Distance is important. Height, etc. 1 in 12 is correct. But it's a lot to think about. It's a lot to consider. And we all have pieces of this puzzle in our hand. We all have a piece in this game. And we have to make the right decisions. So with that, if I can answer a question, I'm happy to do so. Otherwise, thank you for the attention to this matter. It is needed, it's necessary. Where it ends up, we're all concerned about that too. But thank you. Any questions?
Thank you, John. Mayor?
I have a question. I think there's something I wanted to point out, and it's the presentation was great. There's two things that your presentation brought to the forefront. One, I think, is the notion of perceived access versus reality. So yeah, 1 in 12, everything we got it. Got it licked, we got it figured out. And I think one of the questions that has come up over and over again is the perception of access. And so, you look at it, it's like, look at the size of that hill. How am I going to get over it? The reality is you can't get over it. It's just,
that's a warrior statement, but I don't want them to
I get it. And so I think that it's one of those things in all of our evaluations of what has been presented is perception versus reality. And And, I can talk till I'm blue in the face. Oh yeah, these are narrow switchbacks and I can landscape around them. The impact is going to be small. The perception is if I'm living across the street, well, it's not small to me, and I get that. And it's not, it's reality. The other thing, and it's not pertinent to what you were talking about, but it came up and you're talking about, and for a while there, I didn't know which side you were arguing. You were talking about this, sunset.
I made my point.
Yeah, well, I know. Well, so you were talking, have you ever watched the sunset from South Beach? And this thing's gonna be a magnet. And I think when we were listening to Justin, we were listening to cars are speeding by. It's gonna be a magnet. There's gonna be people there. The other is like, God, have you ever watched the sunset? It's gonna be a magnet. How great is that? And it's like, instead of, you have this parking, it's like people will use the parking. It's like, I did that argument, the argument is, well, you put 24 spots there, people are gonna use it. It's like, that's the point. It is a magnet. And there's, in every argument like this, you can toy with both sides. I'm gonna have kids up there drinking beer. Well, you know what? I'm also gonna have people being able to rest halfway to the beach and watch the sunset, whatever. No argument one way or the other. I'm just, making observations to what you
No,
said.
I appreciate it.
Yeah.
I appreciate it. And again, I think one of my concerns would be, and again, I'm trying to stay on the justice scale, but one of my arguments would be, we need to make sure we have something that is fairly dedicated to the ADA. And a location further towards the west and south, off of that very front main street, would serve them better, in my opinion, as far as some use that's dedicated to them with access for families, etc., without drawing in everybody that rides the circle around the island. Because the spot that you're talking about right now is one of the sites. I know you still have sites on them, but there are still alternatives to be considered. Weighing in with what you've heard today, so that's how it started. Considerations. Thank you.
Is there any member of the board that has questions for John? Any member of the public that has questions for John? Yes.
I wonder, doesn't exactly pertain to your topic. It goes to what we were just talking about. I think you're in the room, you're the only one who was supposed to access 42. There's parking lot there. Would you say that is diminished or exacerbated parking on the road?
Exacerbated.
Build a parking lot there, I agree with you, John. It's gonna attract.
The location will blow that parking lot out and it'll be lined all up and down.
Yes, exactly. It's gonna be worse on the road. It's not gonna be there.
Another question back there. Yes. Okay, that's great. You are up next. But, thank you, John.
Thank you.
Hi, my name is Keith Earnshaw, and I'm a resident of Timber Creek, 1A. I'm a real simple mind, but I look back 20 years ago, and I had a spinal cord injury. It's called cauda equina syndrome. Are you a surgeon? You said, and was very lucky that a surgeon came in within 6 hours and got me a MRI. And as he was rolling me up to the emergency room or the surgery room, he was forming his team. He was saying, "Are you an anesthesiologist? Come with me. Who are you?" Because he did very little surgery at this particular hospital. So in essence, he saved my life. He got it in there quickly, cleaned up the mess. But I did use a wheelchair for several months, and I used a walker for several months, and then I used a cane for several months. And finally, I got the reconnections where I could walk and swim again. And if I just put myself in a golf cart with my wheelchair or my walker or even my cane, and I'm trying to get to the beach, I want to get to as close to the beach as possible and park my cart as close as I can get to that sand. And then I want to have a nice flat surface that I can walk to and get out on the beach safely. And I don't want to worry about rain. I don't want to worry about sand that's covering, you know, the structure. And I just want to get out there as easily as possible. And so when I think of, you know, there are great points that I heard today from all sides. There are advantages and disadvantages to everything. But when I picture myself getting that wheelchair out or that walker out, I want to, you know, stop the cart, be able to see the water basically, and get on the structure wherever I'm going to be walking on or wheeling on. And I want to maybe go, you know, 50 or 100 feet and be in the environment, you know, be in the moment. I taught 20 years ago, I was teaching, still do, at NC State part-time. And I did about 8 months where I was using their ramps. And if there was a ramp that was 50 feet, and I was in good shape at the time, I was okay, you know, wheeling up myself or even walking, you know, with a walker. I'd have to be careful. But when I had to go up this way, then get in the building and then go again and again, you know, there were times when it was challenging for me, even being in good shape and, you know, being used to that type of thing. So as a simple mind, I don't want to fight gravity very much. And I want to be as close to my target as possible when I you know, reach for the cane or whatever, and I start getting to the beach. Just my own personal thought if I look back 20 years ago.
Thank you. Any questions? Mayor, any members of the board have questions? We thank you very much. Any members of the public have questions? Thank you very much. We appreciate your comments. I think is there anyone else who desires to speak? Mayor Quinn has offered to take us all down to the site. We missed the viewing at the site, and we could have our presentation there again, because I know you missed out that opportunity. So
When you said that, I looked around, I was like, what?
But other than that, is there any other business we'd like to have come before the meeting today?
The only thing that I request, Justin's presentation, I want a copy. So if he can give that to us.
Justin, are you still with us?
I am, yes.
Okay.
And happy
I'd love to have that.
Yeah, happy to.
To Mayor Quinn.
Yes.
Yeah,
No
that'd be
problem.
great. And you've been taking notes?
Yes.
Just want to make sure I get it.
I'll be glad to.
Okay, great.
And we also recorded it.
Okay.
Again, the purpose of the meeting was to provide information to us. You have done that miraculously. I really appreciate everything. It's a huge help. Thank you for all your effort. Thank you for coming, and we're adjourned. Oh, did you want, there wasn't a vote on whether we want to have another hour down at the beach. We're adjourned.
Thanks for everyone's time.
Sure, because everybody's wanting me to send out information. Y'all get together and decide whether we are going to vote or whether this is a.
There's two steps.
Okay, I know you've written it, but
And we gather, there's a director's meeting this Friday at 10 o'clock here. You are invited. You can come.